All right. Well, hey, hi everyone. Oh yeah, I forgot we had a show.
Yeah.
We're gonna do another book review today. Hope you're all doing well. I'm Vinny,
I'm Tom.
and well, this is the part where we start reviewing books.
Okay.
And
Well,
these are all ones he chose, by the way. He's more the bookworm than I am.
so I thought we would do graphic novels today. The graphic novel / comic genre is pretty dominated by superheroes. But I do love superheroes. I mean, they're fun, but I think that there's more to the medium than that, and a lot of people don't really know where to look for that. Now, a lot of these are horror, because that's what I'm into, but every genre you can think of is available in graphic novel form, and it really is an interesting art, because it is stories with pictures, and it's a lot of pictures. I can't even imagine like how much work some of these must have been to draw. I can understand like the writing process, like I kind of know how to do that, but yeah, the drawing is more foreign to me, and I just kind of love sometimes just sitting back and looking at the beautiful pictures.
Pictures worth 1,000 words.
Yeah. So I have kind of a wide variety of books. The first one we'll talk about is Uzumaki by Junji Ito. I started putting it together as one word. So Uzumaki means spiral in Japanese. This is a Japanese, I guess, graphic novel. You usually call it a manga. They're usually black and white, and they're usually a lot longer running than...
Oh, those are nice illustrations.
Yeah, they're usually a lot longer running than this. I mean, like, I get it, this is a big book, but manga usually has, like, many books this size. But since it is a horror story, and, I mean, it eventually... most horror stories usually end with a lot of deaths. So the story kind of ends. This one is fun. It's a relatively famous one that I only read just recently. The basic premise is that this small town in Japan is being haunted by spirals. So the main character, oh yeah, I always forget, you start these from the back. So this is actually the start of the book. Mm-hmm. So one of the main characters, I guess the main character is really his girlfriend, but her boyfriend is going to school in a neighboring town, and he lives in the town with the spiral, so he's able to see the difference every day, coming back and forth as things start getting weirder. One of the characters starts getting obsessed with the spirals, and so he's creating a spiral in his bathtub here. I don't know if you can see.
3D.
But this eventually drives him insane, and he spirals himself to death.
Oh boy.
I had to figure out which way to turn it. So that's really only the start of it. It just gets weirder from there. But anyway, I really enjoyed Uzumaki. It was very fun. It was very unsettling sometimes. But if you're into horror or if you're into manga, this one's a classic.
Thank you.
We guess we'll do Black Hole next. This one's also horror, and it's also in black and white. This one's set in the late 70s, and it's about a there's there's an STD going around, but it causes like Lovecraftian sores to appear that like you get like monster parts almost that show up on your body, like weird extrusions.
Like wings, fangs, what?
I mean, sometimes it kind of depends. Like one person has like a second mouth that opens on his chest. One girl grows a tail. And it's just kind of like how they deal with that. It's just sort of like everyday life for the most part. Oh, by the way, this is Black Hole by Charles Burns.
There you go.
This one is really excellent. I had a coworker had lent me this graphic novel before actually, and I just happened to. I wanted to reread it, so I got it from Barnes and Noble. And yeah, it's. I love the art style of this. And it is very interesting. There's a large cast of characters who are all affected by this. And it goes into their like dreams and nightmares a lot. It's very interesting. I will say the ending felt like it kind of just sort of ended. I mean, like there is something that happens towards the end that could be, I guess is considered the climax. But both times I read it, I was kind of surprised it was just sort of over. But other than that, I mean, like it was a wonderful ride. I really enjoyed it. All right, let's talk. This one's really fun. We just watched The Goonies today. This one is sort of like The Goonies with girls. Honestly,
Paper Girls.
I mean, like they're not like treasure hunting in that sense, but it's a team up. It's a teenager team up movie set in the 80s. I mean, I know it's not a movie, but that's what it feels like. Honestly, They made a Amazon Prime series out of it that I have not watched, so I have no idea if it how it translates, how it holds up. But this one was just very, very fun. I actually started reading this as well. I mean, I don't buy issues of comics. I buy it when it comes into trade paperback. So I bought the first comic when it came out in trade paperback, and I read it, and I really enjoyed it. And I was reading them as they came out, but then I just sort of fell off for a while. And then I happened to go back to the comic book shop, and I saw a little giant robot, yeah. And I saw that they had the complete series, so I was like, I'm just going to get it. So there's these 4 paper girls in the 1980s who go on a time-traveling, world-hopping adventure. It's a sci-fi adventure. It's a very lot of fun. It's very colorful, which is, in contrast to like these two, which are just straight black and white. In fact, the next two we're going to talk about are also just black and white. But this one, like the color like pops.
Yeah, there is good color in this one.
Yeah, like here even there's just they're like turning into skeletons. But yeah, I just love like the sky is like purple and pink.
Close up.
But yeah, I love the art style. This is by Brian K. Vaughan. Cliff Chang did the art for it. Brian K. Vaughan also did Why the Last Man, which they started as a FX series that had been in development hell for a long time. The thing is it just, I don't know, I watched it and I was like, this is not the tone of the comics. Because Brian K. Vaughan's stuff is very lighthearted for the most part. I mean, like, serious stuff might happen, but it's kind of like the like 80s or 90s, early 2000s adventure movies where like, who knows, the world might end, but we're gonna crack some jokes, like it's fun. And for some reason that tone seems to be hard for them to kind of do well these days. Live action, I feel like they either go like too far in one direction or the other. It becomes too jokey and like the serious moments fall flat, or it becomes too serious and then it just kind of becomes kind of dour. I feel like that's kind of like you kind of want to get that like sweet spot in between. But yeah, so Brian K. Vaughan also wrote Saga, which is ongoing, which is a sci-fi fantasy series. The first line of which starts, "Am I shitting? It feels like I'm shitting." We'll talk about that when that finishes, because I also really enjoy that series. But this one's done, so you can pick up the full series. It's a kind of a hefty book. I mean, I guess most of these are. That's actually not typical. Most comics are rather small, but I like to read a lot, so I don't mind getting a big comic book like this. Yeah. But yeah, this one was really fun. I enjoyed it very much. And one thing that I also really enjoyed, it is written by a man, but most of the main characters are women. I think one of them, their dad is in it at one point, but then he leaves. Everybody else, every main character is female. So that was pretty cool. It was a nice counterpoint to, something like The Goonies, where there are very few. I mean, like, there's a few female characters, but, like, the majority of the important characters are male. Mm-hmm. Or, like, Stand By Me. Like, I mean,
a great movie.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a great movie, but, like, probably, like, one of their moms is in it. I don't even remember, but, like, everybody else is male. And so they've kind of turned that dynamic on its head, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So yeah, this one's really fun. So if you're not into horror, this one's probably the one for you.
Lugosi.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about these two together because they're by the same author and they're essentially the same sort of thing. So this is Lugosi, The Rise and Fall of Hollywood's Dracula and the Twilight Man, Rod Serling and the Birth of Television, by Corinne Shadme. And these are both really interesting. They're essentially biography graphic novels. So this one does have a framing narrative that is fictional, but most everything else that happens in here is, I mean, like, obviously by rendering it in a drawing and having dialogue in there, he has fictionalized it. But
and the illustrations are good in all these books.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, honestly, that's the thing. Like, if you're looking for a graphic novel to read, definitely flip through it before you buy it, because if you don't like the art style, you're probably not going to like the book, even if the writing is great. And that can be a problem sometimes. Like, I just recently actually reread...
Sorry, you were saying?
I actually just recently reread The Sandman by Neil Gaiman, and I think the writing on that is very, very good, but they switch artists with, like, each collection of the 10, and some of them I don't like. Some of them I don't like the art styles, and so that kind of affects the overall reading of it for me, where I don't enjoy it as much. Like, I really like the art style on the first 2 books, and then some of the other ones I'm like, ooh, I don't know, man. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind is, I mean, usually I would be like, story comes before aesthetics, but when you're looking for a graphic novel to read, you definitely want to vibe with what the artist is drawing. Because if you don't like their art style, you're not going to like the book, ultimately. Mm-hmm. So Each of these are like really just fun. Well, okay, they both live very tragic lives, so I don't know if fun is the right word, but they're very interesting to read through. So like Lugosi, if you're familiar with the film Ed Wood by Tim Burton, Lugosi shows up in his later years in that, where he was a drug addict and was making pictures with Ed Wood Jr., who was later named the worst director of all time and gained a cult following because of that. And they recreate some of the scenes in Ed Wood in here. But they cover,
remember that movie.
Yeah, but they cover the entirety of both of these people's lives. So Rod Serling is on an airplane and begins recounting the story of his life to a fellow passenger who didn't bring a book. And so he talks about his war years. He wrote a lot of dramatic work, especially, I forget the name of the show, but it they used to just have plays that they would do on TV. It was one of the earliest shows ever made, and then they ended it, I think it was sometime in the 50s, but or maybe it was the 60s. But it was a big deal. So he was doing a lot of like very political, dramatic play work. And he was finding that he had to fight against censorship. And so he started the Twilight Zone because he thought that when his very political stories were cloaked in genre, he could say basically whatever he wanted. And he didn't really face much censorship because you had to interpret it as meaning what it meant. And so that was one of the big reasons he decided to create the Twilight Zone, and then it covers through his final years. Lugosi starts off with Bela in Hungary, and then takes him through like the years that he spent playing Dracula on the stage, his role as Dracula in Hollywood, his drug addiction, which he was the first celebrity to check into rehab, so that was a big deal at the time. And then ultimately goes to his death. I didn't realize, but he had many wives, over 3. It might have been 5. I kind of lost track. but yeah, he had several marriages, and so that was really interesting, and I just love the artwork. Oh yeah, and the author also illustrated these. They're based on like some of these are based on life drawings. So like essentially he took pictures of artists, or at least that's what it sounded like from the back cover and like what he said in there. It sounds like he had like people like pose and then took pictures and then did the artwork from that. But it looks very lifelike. So these are kind of unusual. I've never actually read anything quite like this, where these are essentially true stories just rendered as graphic novel. But yeah, I loved these. These were very good. Now,
Last but not least,
this is actually my favorite of the bunch. And we're back to horror. So this one, I actually I gave my softcover copy to a friend and was just like, I'm just going to get a hardcover because I love this book so much. So this edition of the book is new, even though I previously had the book. I tried to choose ones that I've read for the first time recently or like just recently bought. And technically, yes, I'd recently bought this one, but I had it for a long time. So this is House of Penance by Peter J. Tomasi. And oh my god, I love the artwork on this. If you want to just flip through, because it's pretty nuts. So the premise is they've oh yeah, you can, like I love the like rivers of blood, but okay, so
Very nice color in this one.
he's taken the story of the Winchester Mystery House and has fictionalized it. So the Winchester rifle was a huge deal when it came out, both because you could fire multiple bullets from it, and I believe it was also made with with interchangeable parts, so that you could swap it out if something broke. The Winchester rifle is sometimes credited as the rifle that won the West.
Yes.
So it made a fortune for the Winchesters, but the family suffered the tragic loss of their daughter, and then the husband, Mr. Winchester, died soon after that. So Sarah Winchester was left a widow and consulted a psychic who told her that she was being haunted, she and the family were being haunted by the spirits of all of the people who were killed by the Winchester rifle, and that she needed to build a house continuously in order to confuse these spirits. So she built a labyrinth of a house called the Winchester Mystery House,
Which we've talked about going to one day.
Yeah, in San Jose, California. So
It's haunted.
yeah, there's like staircases that lead to nowhere. There's
Doors that open to nothing.
Yeah, there's a set of French doors that are installed in the floor. There's a door off of a room that plunges several stories to the ground. So this is a fictionalized story of the building of the Winchester Mystery House. I didn't know this. I don't know if this is accurate or not. It makes sense to me that this would be true, but within the context of this story, Sarah Winchester is essentially using mostly convicts who they can't get work doing much else, so they just kind of show up at her house, and then she starts employing them, and she has them working in I think she has 3 shifts of constant building, and she just sort of tells them what she wants made today. Like, they're not working off of blueprints, they just make stuff. So Sarah Winchester is one of the 2 main characters, and then the other one, I don't remember his name, but he's essentially like your typical sort of like cowboy sort of character at the start. He has clearly, he was a veteran in the Indian Wars and has killed people in the past. Like, you know, he not even just in war, like he has been hired to kill homesteaders who are in the way of the railroad. So he ends up he's been stabbed. I think he was killing a Native American. Anyway, he ends up coming to the Winchester house and takes employment as one of the builders, and he and Sarah slowly like begin to understand each other, and like they're kind of flirting the whole time. It's also like, it's very interesting how it's rendered, because they so they show Sarah's, what she is thinking is going on, like as so like this is reality, but then they'll render her delusions as frame. I'm trying to find one of them because I thought that they were so interesting. Here, maybe it's later on.
Didn't pass it, did we?
No, I mean, but you see, like, there's like these like little like tendrils of like blood. That's part of her delusion. Oh yeah. So like she freaks out at one point because she's seeing like tendrils of blood coming up underneath the floor, and so then she like starts attacking the floor. Um, and it's really interesting because like it's a ghost story, but at the same time you can interpret it as not. It's sort of like The Haunting of Hill House or The Turn of the Screw, where there's only ghosts if you decide that there are ghosts in there. Everything can be interpreted as oh, here's the scene I was looking for. So our cowboy is like, essentially dying of this stab wound, and so they put him in the cellar to feed the furnace, and they notice that it's getting cold. So Sarah goes downstairs to find out what's going on with him, and this is what she's seeing, and then this is reality. He's just curled up on the floor, naked with his stab wound. But it's a fascinating, like, psychological journey. When I first got this graphic novel, I read it once all the way through, and then I immediately turned back to the start and read it again.
Yeah, that good, huh?
I don't think I've ever done that with any other book. Even ones that I love very much, I've never read it back to back. And I did that, so yeah, I think this one's fantastic. I actually don't know anything else that this author has written, but I love this one so much. This book is only semi in print, so you might have to get it used if you want it. The other ones are all pretty available. These ones are newish. Same with this one. These ones are both a few years old. This one I think was from the 80s, actually. I'm not 100% on that. And I don't think it has a copyright date in here that I can check. Uzumaki, drawn from 1998 to 1999. So I'm wrong, it was the late 90s. But these are both relatively old. These ones only came out recently. House of Penance is like, I think it was like 2015, so
all right,
only a few years ago. But in terms of comics, that's a long time. Like, you probably will have to order that one online. These other ones you might be able to find in store. I bought both of these in a comic book shop, and then the rest of these I got from Barnes & Noble. But House of Penance I had to order online.
Lots of ways to get books now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a wonderful site called Abe Books that is for used books if you want to use it instead of Amazon. That was one feature that I missed from... Like, I've stopped using Amazon because of their practices. And, I mean, like, it's relatively easy to find new books. I mean, like, Barnes & Noble is good. There's a couple other places that you can get stuff online, but Barnes & Noble is honestly the only remaining like big chain bookstore. But yeah, I did miss like getting like used books off of Amazon because like you can just go on there and like get something for a penny. And I've not seen anything for a penny on Abe Books, but I recently ordered 9 books for $60. So that's not bad. So definitely check that out. Hamilton Books is also a pretty good one, but they don't have a ton of like different stuff. It's only a few things, whatever they happen to want, whatever they happen to have wholesale right now, and they're going to sell for you. But I got like the Dune books 4 through 6 off of them for $5 each. So, not bad.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing your latest books.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time.
See you guys.